In this video, I want to show you how to set up parameters in different subdomains. There'll be three different ways of doing this. We'll have a different subnode for each physics node. We'll define the variables in each subdomain, and we'll use material properties. So here's the first one. This is the simplest, and here we're just going to use different subnodes to define the properties. So you can see the Darcy's Law of Physics node, and this is a subnode, and it defines the properties, the fluid properties and the porous media properties in the matrix, domain 1 and 3. And then here is the other subdomain, the fracture subdomain, and it defines the properties, and we're just entering the numbers for the porosity and the permeability. So simple, but not really all that flexible. In this case, here's an example of using a variable name, porosity, to enter the value. In the other cases, I just entered the numerical value for the property. Okay, so now let's look at defining the variable in each subdomain. In this case, we're going to go up to the definitions, and I'm going to put in two definitions, one for the fracture and one for the matrix, and I select the appropriate subdomain, and then you see I have the variables porosity and K, and I define them, and they're defined for each subdomain. Now when I use the Darcy's physics and I go to the subnode and define the properties, if I enter the variables porosity and K, I just have to do that once for all the subdomains, but those variables have different values for the different subdomains, the way I set it up in definitions. Now, another way of doing it is with the materials, and here's an example of doing that. So if we go to the materials, we have the fluid properties, the water, and we also have the matrix properties. So we need to define both of them in the different subdomains. So we'll do the fracture first, and I'm going to go and first of all put in some of the basic properties, and so we'll put in water, and now I've got fracture as a definition or as a property and water as a property. So under fracture, now I'm going to go and add in the permeability and porosity. So I go to basic, and I'm going to need to select those two properties from the basic catalog here. So there's porosity, and I'm going to right click and add material. Same with permeability. So now if I go to basic, they're the two materials that I just put in there, and I can fill in values. Could put in functions there if I wanted to. So now we've got the material properties for the matrix, but now we gotta have that fluid property in there. So I'm going to use merge, go to the water, and I merge the water property with fracture, and now I've got both the porosity and permeability and the water as part of the fracture, what I'm calling fracture. So I put in another material, and I'm going to do the same thing for the matrix. Now I have to add the water properties. And then use the merge. Okay, so those are the properties set up. Now I have to go and make sure that I select the proper subdomain for those properties. So those are the subdomains for the matrix, and that's the subdomain for the fracture. And that's the setup. So those are some different ways of doing the same thing. Really, you just are defining the properties. Well, here, let's take a look and see how that's set up. Now I have the both the fluid properties and the matrix properties as from material. Before I was just using the water properties from material, but now I have both. And just go ahead and run this. Runs just fine.